You are a spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout, to amplify and transcend, slay the ego, raise the humanity. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone. Hey y'all, hey.
Hello.
LinkedIn, YouTube. We are back. What was the last one we did? Was that last week? What month are we in, y'all? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to the High Vibe Zone. Familiar faces. Who do we have with us today?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
It's great to be here.
Super excited about this topic. It's something that we talk about a lot amongst ourselves and within Culture Circle and within our client partners. Going through how do we lead with humanity and leading with humanity, what does that look like? This is a new year. A lot of people making resolutions, a lot of people making some intents, and everyone in their own way is a leader. So how do you lead with humanity as we're embarking on this 2022 journey? If this is your first time joining us in the High Vibe Zone, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Excited to have you. Would love to know where you're joining from. Drop some comments of your name, what you're grateful for. I'm going to introduce my two, I don't know if you guys are guests anymore. I think you're more like regulars.
Ooh.
Regulars here in High Vibe Zone. To the screen left of me, right, is Maria.
Me. Thank you.
You're welcome. And to the bottom.
I was going to say it feels Brady Bunchy. I like this. Andrea, me, human.
Yes.
Human.
Love it. And we got our first comment here. Leading with humanity by first admitting that you are human, ... All right, Kim. We're going to be looking at you today.
Kim knows what it's about.
Yes. So again, if you're joining us, drop some comments in the comment box, questions, happy to answer. But we're going to get this conversation started with a bit of dialogue around, first off, what started this conversation here? Like leading with humanity. Why are we talking about that here?
Where do we even begin? We have countless, for those of you who are listening in, tuning in from wherever you're from, as a tribe within Culture Circle, we have so many conversations about what we see, what we notice, either with our client partners or in the world. We read a lot. And we're seeing things on video pop up, and then conversations that we have with friends, family, those in our community, people we work with outside of Culture Circle, partners. There are so many places where there's a gap in how the human is showing up at work, and where we've noticed, and the three of us have chatted too, about just what's missing and how people are feeling and what bubbles up as a result of how people are feeling low vibe or not feeling seen, heard, witnessed in the workspace. And then how can that be shifted? So it was that conversation of how can that be shifted that prompted this concept of leadership development and leading with humanity. What does that mean? And that kind of brought us to where we are today. Here in this moment.
I love that,
right
Andrea.
now.
I think it's interesting because the three of us sort of have our ear to the ground in terms of we get to work with a lot of organizations and companies that are struggling with and trying to be better at leadership. And a lot of times it's referred to as leadership management. But I know that's one thing we've discussed before. It's like humans aren't meant to be managed, right? And so we are, focused on humanity first. So when we lead with humanity, it's a little bit of a different mindset or philosophy when it comes to, working with your team. If you're in a higher leadership position or just any position, really, you're working with other humans. And so it's really important to keep at the forefront, and it's really our foundation. Like the foundation is what touches the ground, essentially. And so a lot of the problems that sometimes we end up seeing in companies, maybe it's around like performance feedback or building relationships or creating environments of accountability, things that are generally in the leadership umbrella. Like we have to have a solid foundation of humanity first before you can even get to those other issues.
I love how both of y'all have said this, because it's like y'all said, we've seen this so many times in the work that we're doing. In fact, we've created a leadership development program to help leaders lead with humanity. And we do this just by default of companies bringing us in. When there is a tough situation or a tight situation or something that seems almost impossible, we break it down in the most simplest form of like, all right, where do you want to lead from as a human? What is the human component that's happening here? And we just see the walls just kind of fall down, and then the awe moments happen. And so we're here to talk about that, because over the last couple years, we've seen so much happen, and a lot of it could be simply solved by us really tapping into that humanity component within ourselves. And it's not a complicated situation. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with y'all today, and got to give a shout out to Alyssa. Hey girl, hey, welcome back. So excited that you're here. We haven't talked since 2021, so happy new year to you. Kim, love it. I am human. Welcome. We welcome all humans here in the High Vibe Zone. Love this comment. People feel replaced by technology, and devoid of human contact and empathy. I mean, there's so much to dive into there. So I would love to touch on this as we're going through the conversation, like talking about that, because there is a tech versus touch approach when it comes to leading with humanity. So thank you for that comment. All right, let's dive in.
Can we start with the thing that I think executives are thinking about right now, which is, I've heard this so many times, let's hit the ground running. It's a new year. We've got strategies. We have plans. We have milestones and deliverables, and we need to get at them. So, yes, how do you achieve your goals and ROI? We're going to sprinkle in those dirty corporate words into this while honoring the humans, which right now we're still in a pandemic. There are families who have realities to deal with, whether you've got children, like human children, fur children, or you're single, but you have responsibilities outside of work. How are companies supposed to lead with humanity, honor the human, and achieve their goals? I know we have thoughts on all of this. That's what I think might get us started. Thoughts, ladies?
I think those are all things, everything you mentioned, I agree with. And I think it's things that are perhaps bubbling up as different issues for companies, and then we end up trying to come up with more strategies or better ways to manage without actually addressing the first thing, which is how do we see someone as human first. And I've actually seen it with a lot of my friends, in terms of companies not necessarily honoring that. For example, last year in Texas, we had a huge, we called it the snowpocalypse. Everything froze. We had no power, Andrea and I, for like a week. And some of my friends' companies were like, oh, like, but you'll be on Slack, right? And we're like, no, we have no internet. And so it's just, or companies expecting people to work even after the power came back, when it's like, no, we're still trying to take care of our neighbors. The roads are still frozen over. So it's really important for everybody to remember that we're all sort of in this together, and that sometimes we just have to take a step back and really realize that someone might be going through something that you don't know anything about. So I guess a question is, from a higher level leader position, how are you able to do that and make sure that it transcends within you, and that you express that those feelings with your people, and that your people also feel okay to do the same?
The example that you gave around Texas, I think is a really important one, that I don't even think there was a debrief of talking about what happened and how impactful that was, because, not to mention there were lives that were lost during that time too. And I think it's, to answer your question, one of the first things that came to my mind is, if you are a leader in any capacity, whether you're at, whether you have the C-level title, or you don't have you have maybe a more generic title, whatever that is, the leadership really starts with knowing your own humanity and really being tapped into that, and sitting with that. It is not, and I've said this before, it is a lot easier to do business the bad way, to negate the human, to toss people aside, to check, box, wall. It is so much easier to do that in business. The more challenging bit is to sit with your own humanity and realize, man, I'm dealing with a lot of different things. How can I ground and come to the table where I'm not taking that out on people, or where I'm not showing up as a leader that's really not leading from a space that is going to help others, and I'm leading from stress or scarcity or fear. And so where a lot of leaders can start is just tapping into their own humanity, and that requires quiet and closing out all the noise that's around you, and really just, okay, where am I? Where do I want to be? And being honest with yourself. Sometimes coaches can really help with that, drawing that out of you, but you have to start there, because anything else that comes out of, whether it's fear, scarcity, is going to affect and influence and impact the way that you lead, and it will compromise your humanity. You're on mute.
I love what both of you said. And what was kind of in the back of my head is, in working with the frozen middle for so many years, it's the group of leaders in a company who report to the executives, the top executives of the company, but then also manage teams and people. And so often they're stuck between, I have to deliver on XYZ because this leader is demanding ABC. But then they're also holding space, or the reality of teams of dozens, if not more, people who have their own realities. And it's the, how does this frozen middle hold space for themselves? Like, that's, Maria, as you were talking, like the words that were coming to me are holding space. And Charisse, it speaks to what you were saying too. like seeing your own humanity. How do you work with that? It's that quiet and holding space for yourself and understanding of like, what do I need so that I can have a dialogue with the ladder going up, but also dialogue with those. I don't like saying up and down. It's people across the board, but it's the teams that you're working with in either capacity. Can you have an open dialogue? But starting that dialogue requires this compassion and humanity for yourself and knowing where you are, so that, again, Charisse, what you said is spot on in terms of like, if you're reacting out of fear, scarcity, or just a lack of humanity for yourself, are you able to be present in a compassionate, empathic type of way for everyone around you? Because that's really what prompts the productive dialogue. And if you can do that, you can actually accomplish those goals. So it's not an absence of humanity to get to the goals, it's with it. What does that create?
I just have to say, what you just said was so layered in what I think gets buried in all of the day-to-day of business. Something that's I'm just the one thing that I've noticed, that when our client partners work with us, they are skeptical. And I've heard this multiple different times. They're skeptical at the approach that we have. We're very calm. We're very woo-woo-esque in certain ways, but we're also very efficient because we tap into the human quicker and unlike anything that they've been able to see. And very shortly, the skepticism goes away. And while you were talking, I was just envisioning like, okay, yeah. Bottom line. It's like, well, wait, there's something to this humanity bit. We've seen this with the resignation revolution. We've seen it throughout history. It's like, you can't bypass the human experience. You can try and compensate for it, but eventually what will happen is there will be almost a collapsion of the culture in so many ways. And like, when we speak of like kindness and empathy and like, you know, those words don't necessarily exist in business other than in advertising ways. And some leaders will see that as like weakness and like not what's needed to get things done. However, unless you're commanding robots, you need that humanity tap in. And what we have seen is just like, we'll come in and we'll just do our human thing. And we know the business part, that's the linear part. We got that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, how is all of this working? It's because we tapped into the humanity. And it's a power that everyone has because you're human. It just requires more consciousness. And I would also say it requires a little bit more critical thinking of like, why is this happening in this way? If you've lost trust, why have I lost trust? Where is that in relationship to where I want things to be? So I'm so appreciating what you've said about this, because it was just like, yeah, that makes so much sense.
And something, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say a quick add to that, like why I'm on that train of thought. For anyone who's out there who's an executive right now, leader, manager, or employee, an individual contributor, if your leadership is saying, and this is a real life example from my past, your leadership is saying, our goals and your motivation for the year is driven by the financial goal that we need to accomplish as a company. It's right there, wave a white flag for your team. And more broadly, that is not inspiring to any human. I'm going to work 80 hours a week. I'm going to do whatever I can to make more money for the company. That's not motivating. It's not building any dynamic that is productive. It's not seeing the human within it. It's not validating your human needs in that space. And Charisse, to what you were saying, what companies tend to do is see that financial goal or see whatever goal is set, the strategies that they're trying to deliver on. And then to compensate for that, they create groups, HR groups, ERGs pop up, other things pop up. It's always outside of the everyday experience. And those to me are band-aids, and they're not helping to bring humanity into a culture. It's actually distancing it further. So that's what was kind of popping up. And that's what prompted that dialogue. But I'm sorry, Maria, you were going to say.
No, everything you just said is 100%. And I would also add, I think, and Charisse touched on it, I think a lot of people might hear the word humanity and instantly think, oh, we're talking about sunshine, happy, bright humanity, which to a certain extent, like I understand, but also we have to realize that I guess what clicked for me when we first started talking about humanity is the HUE, something we call the HUE, HUE, and it's humanity, Ubuntu, efficiency. And humanity we've touched on, but I'd also like to add about Ubuntu, which, as Charisse has told us before, and we've done previous high vibe zones on it, it's I am because you are. And I think if you're able to understand that on a personal level, that, you know, I am because both of you are, and you are because I am, then that actually, just saying that to yourself really helps me, at least personally, make decisions or figure out what the best way to treat someone is, because it's it really says it's like I exist and I am who I am, and I like my mood depends on you, my everything. It's like we're all intertwined. And then efficiency, which you talked about before, it's like we can have both. We can have humanity and efficiency. And the other thing that came to mind as well is everyone's definitions are different in terms of the use of the word kindness and empathy and vulnerability, all these things that are kind of being thrown around within a lot of companies. It doesn't mean that you're being kind to someone just because they were sick one day and then the next day everything returns back to normal. It's not about being performative in that way. And I think my experience with the ice storm in Texas and the way that Charisse, you sort of responded to that was so thoughtful. I think your email said like take a few energetic days, like health days after the fact, like after we had returned to power and everything. And I'm sure you felt the same, Andrea, but it was like I was like excited to come back to work. I'm like, I'm ready to come back. And then I was like, wait, no, like energetic days to like reorganize my life after this crazy experience were actually very much needed. So to me, that was an example of a leader leading with humanity, not with a one instance kind of thing, but something that actually is embedded with everything that we do and everything we experience as people.
That right there is the secret sauce to leading with humanity, by the way, because Maria, what you just said, I felt too. But it's the like, I want to work with this company. I want to work with this group of people. I can't wait to come back because they recognize me. They see that I have needs. It's not just the, hey, I know that you are down right now in terms of like, you don't have power, it might be cold and you might not have food, it might be running out, you don't have running water, but there's an email you need to send. Can you get on that as quickly as possible? It wasn't that at all. It was like, everything's on hold. Don't worry about anything. Take your time, heal, do what you need to. We got this. Yeah. That's the culture that we'd like to create as a culture circle with our client partners too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to go to a few of these comments here. The focus on people employees did not increase until they can not find people to employ. Interesting. Interesting comment. Well, I think there was like a poop emoji moment. Like people are really leaving. Maybe we should pay. It's almost like, I don't know, for those that have been in
different relationships, but it's like, don't miss me while I'm gone. Like, love me while I'm here, right? That kind of vibe. It's, you know, that reactiveness that companies tend to have, because being proactive takes maybe 3.5 more seconds. It's like, your people aren't going to stay just because of a job. And historically, that has been the case. But we're not in history right now. We're going into the future of work. And the future of work is humanity. It's human. And so, Kim, your comment makes a lot of sense of what we've seen happening. Um, okay. Yeah. Do business with less. I mean, we could even go back. Maybe we don't have time for this, but like, go back to how the Industrial Revolution really was a lot of how the workplace has dispersed, even from the beginnings of HR, and how business has been evolving. And I think technology in business is great. I love tech companies. I mean, this is why I've got into this business. I love them so much, but I also know that they can't do the tech without the touch, without the human part of it. And I think the two existing together, that's what we're doing here. We're building that bridge, and the leaders being connected to that bridge making is very, very key.
And for that one, I would also add that a lot of things are getting automated. So that actually makes it 100 million times more important to really hone in on your humanity, because that is what sets you apart from everything else. If you can be another human with feelings and emotions, that sets you up for a lot more success. And it just, it really reinforces the fact that we need to lead with more humanity.
And then this comment. Starting people to, yeah, that is actually very true. I mean, maybe that's for another high vibe zone. Here we go. Please speak on fear felt by bosses and employees. Andrea, you and I have talked about this a lot, so I'd love to pass it to you in terms of kicking us off with this conversation around fear, for sure.
My whole career, everything, like that word fear, it's what drives people to be a certain way, think a certain way, react a certain way, be present a certain way. So for bosses, leaders in any company, Charisse, you used a word earlier that I want to bring back into this: conscientiousness, maybe mindfulness, as we can use the titles manager, individual, contributor, but human, because all humans face fear one way or another. When it drives you as a manager, executive in a company, because you're afraid of not making your goals, you're afraid of what people might think of you if you say something a particular way. Maria, you said this earlier, that the word, or Charisse, one of you said, like, kindness can be perceived as a weakness, or humanity can be perceived as a weakness within a company. That's all driven by fear. Who do you want to be? How do you want to be present? And if it's a disconnect from the other leaders in the organization, why do you feel that you are unable to have the conversation with them so that you can advance the culture of your company into one that is based in humanity? If you don't address the fears that you are feeling as an individual, I'm not saying like just start to have this dialogue openly with everyone around you. Be mindful of what's driving you in your decisions, your thoughts, your behaviors at work and at home, because they bleed into one another. It's the starting point for addressing it. And employees, it's easy for us to sit here in this particular conversation and say, if you're afraid of something, have that conversation with your boss or with your coworkers. That's not reality in a lot of cultures where people feel unsafe. So Charisse, we can take this, and Maria, we've talked about this too. We could take this into so many different directions, but that just sets the stage. Like, the first step is mindfulness of where you are and how you are feeling, and being truthful to yourself of why you might be feeling that way. But how would I'm looking at both of you right now, like for an employee who's feeling that. Where do you take that? How can you have a conversation of this isn't working for me in this space? Remote work and the fear of going back into the office as one example. Like, how do you have a conversation with your manager, with HR, people ops, if you don't feel safe?
Two things come to my mind. One is the Finkster.
Please do bring that in. We haven't had that.
We haven't had the Finkster in a while, y'all. We're going to talk about the Finkster. So essentially, the Finkster is a really good physical sign if you're feeling safe. So the Finkster, men have 2, women have 3. And we use this a lot in the birthing space as a doula. And the Finkster, essentially, let's say we're birthing our baby back in the cave days, and I'm in a cave birthing my baby, and all of a sudden a saber-toothed tiger comes up. I don't feel safe. Finkster closes. I can go birth my baby somewhere else. So the Finkster controls a lot of different areas. Another way of putting this is, as a doula, when I help families, I ask them, can you poop in front of me? Because if you can poop in front of me, you can help birth. So the Finkster controls all different types of things, including how we speak. If we don't feel safe, our throats don't open up. This is why we don't chew and experience danger at the same time. Like, it's just not how our bodies are wired. So when you think of fear, we are highly adaptable as humans. So we can adapt to different levels of fear. However, what happens psychologically, physiology, like in the background, is we're running more cortisol. We are basically not able to birth the things that, the ideas, the creativity, the innovation, the things that are really going to help push things forward. As a company, you are losing a lot if you have a fear-based culture, because nothing of greatness will be birthed out of that. It will really be, halved, maybe even 30% of what is possible, because psychologically and just the way that our bodies are wired, we do not yield if we don't feel safe. The crops aren't harvested at abundance if we don't have all of those components. And so where I would probably, to answer your question, Andrea, where I would take this is look at the symptoms, or just the outcomes of what fear does to our bodies, and just think about that. So you're at work, now it's at your house, or if you're going physically into the office, you're at, or it's inside of your space, and you have fear. Like, an email comes in, or you see a ping on your Slack, or you fear around commenting on someone's LinkedIn post that you align with, because you don't want your people to see you commenting on certain things. All of that messes with your body's chemistry, your hormones, your sleep, the way you eat, the way you release weight, the way that you retain it. So I would start by looking at what areas of my life are potentially affected by fear of where I currently am, and just start to dissect that a little bit. Because once you realize that I've been operating out of fear, and these things that I've been asking for in my life to change, whether it is relationship or finances, will not reach their full potential while I am running that fear energy, that scarcity energy, that survival energy, might empower you to start making little changes there. Now, maybe you're not ready to talk to your manager or your boss, but you might want to make small adjustments where you can start to practice to have those conversations. But I would say, look at the effects of fear and allow that to seep in, because your health is not, no job is worth your health.
And I would also add that sometimes you might not even realize that the fear is there, or that it might show up as anxiety or as something else. I know for me, it wasn't until I came into Culture Circle and our work culture that is very humanity that I realized that in my previous role, I did have fear and anxiety, but I didn't even realize that I had it until I realized I no longer had it. And so I started realizing, like, oh, I don't feel anxious for my Monday morning meetings with my boss anymore. I was like, I wonder what happened at my previous job that did make me anxious. So I think just sometimes to answer that question, it's like we don't realize that fear is there until we actually no longer even face it. So I would entice you to sit again and reflect and think about what feelings come up at certain points of your day, or when you feel that having a conversation is difficult. So just notice those things first before you even react or respond to them.
That was great. And to go to some of these comments here, worked in the public ed space, and it's very sad to see how the educators and students' humanity is neglected. It's all about hitting the targets and not about centering the work around the human. Whereas, like, I just want to challenge a couple leaders out there. Try this other way. Like, empower your humanity and empower the humans around you, and see how skyrocketing your targets will go. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to the old way. But if it does, you unlock something that is not taught in Business 101. That's not amplified in these books and things that you see in the Tao or whatever. Like, something will magically open up.
And shout out to Erica. Hey, Erica, for this question. And as you were talking, Charisse, a thought came up, and it's in the education space, which we also work in as well with Humanity Power, our sister nonprofit that works with children and education. But we saw it the other day when we were trying to explain what humanity is to a company. And then when we asked your daughter, Marley, who's in middle school, I believe, we asked her what humanity is, and she explained it in the most simplest way that just clicks. And that's when you realize, like, maybe educators should take a look at kids, because kids know what humanity is more than adults do, in a way, because they haven't experienced a lot of the things that we've experienced as we grow older. And of course, it is different for kids as well as with adults, and there's different levels of it. But at the very basic form, kids know what humanity is, and they can learn to recognize it, as we can see in Humanity the Manatee book that you wrote. It's kids can see, like you said, the analogy the other day when you were driving and one of your kids were like, oh, that driver didn't have humanity. So how can we look at kids as a fountain of wisdom in this? Like, we all know at the deepest of our hearts when we treat someone with humanity and when we don't.
Yeah, seriously. When folks want to honor their humanity and find balance, their frown, that's starting to change, to be honest. People are starting to realize that there is another way to operate slowly, by just sensing of where they are. And if you are someone that honors your humanity and are seeking to find balance, don't change. The rest of the world will catch up. Don't worry. Because once you find your humanity, everything else opens up. It's what we do here at Culture Circle. Like, how do we bottle this up and, like, put it in other companies? Because it's a real thing. But yeah, don't lose your humanity and balance. And frown all they want. They're not in the arena with us.
feel like when you release that expectation, even if everybody that you're working with is doing that, you don't need to create what you want. And if that's not the company organization that you need to be working with, it's like the universe brings into your path the next thing that really is more aligned with how you want to be, the life you want to live. And I can say I was one of those. I celebrated in myself that I was killing myself for my companies, like over time. And I did. I broke my body real good along the way. Stress does that, right? The intensity, it does that. Until I stood up for myself, it's like advocating for yourself, looking within, going back to the beginning of this conversation. What do you need for yourself? What are you afraid of? Where do you want to be? Answer those questions for yourself before you try to even change kind of the world around you or the organization or culture. But it's possible once you find out where you want to be. Create that balance for yourself. There are others out there, like Charisse said. It is the direction that the world is moving in.
And I'd like to maybe shift a little bit and talk around how do we help leaders lead with humanity? I know we don't have the full AAA with us here today, but Andrea, you are a very core part of the leadership development program that we have. And I'd love to maybe talk a little bit about that. And if there's any leaders out there or just individuals that are looking to level up their leadership, like what can we gift them in this moment, and how can we kind of direct them to just start the curiosity journey if they don't know where to begin?
Well, a shout out to the other two members of AAA. We call our leadership development team AAA because all our names begin with A. So Alyssa and Aaron, who are not with us today, but will be in future livecasts that we're doing. What do we do that's different? So when it comes to leadership development, you'll hear coaching, consulting for leaders. There are all kinds of names that are put to it. Our team, as you can get by our vibe by now, we don't do things in the traditional way. We have a philosophical approach and then a pragmatic and behavioral approach to working with people, and then also an energetic, intuitive, and spiritual approach for leadership development. So the three of us, the AAA, we partner one-on-one or in team settings, depending on the dynamic with our client partners and what's needed or desired in that moment, to really find out what is at the heart of why we're being brought in and why we're having that conversation in the first place. We're not bringing in, oh, here's this best practice and why don't you try this? And like, it's not about putting Band-Aids on that particular situation. It's about sitting with someone and holding space for whatever is going on for them in that moment on that day. So we don't just push forward with you've booked 3 sessions and we need to accomplish this, and this in those 3 sessions. And it's not about that. It's about meeting the human where the human is and taking what our learned and lived experiences are within the AAA and helping to guide people forward one baby step at a time, and then changing course, bringing in another member of our team if it's needed, or shifting out whatever it is that we're working on and trying something new, backed by our tribe. So it's not one person who's a coach doing anything in any given moment, just pushing forward whatever they think or feel is totally best for someone. It's about really partnering and hearing what that person, that soul needs in that moment. And then working with the rest of our tribe if we need additional resources to be able to help find it. It's not that we're saying that we've got all the answers. It's that we're here to help.
Wonderfully said. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. What else can we say?
Specifics?
Yeah, what else comes to mind? I mean, we've covered a lot when it comes to leading with humanity, and even just bringing in how we help any size leader do that. Trying to think if there's anything else that we can add to this.
I would highlight one of the last things Andrea mentioned, which is meet the human where the human is, or something like that you said. Meet the human, yeah, where the human is. Everybody's on a different journey, and I think it's important that we all honor that. I think it's okay. Everybody was a beginner at one point, and everybody's on a different track. And so just remembering that we're not all going to be on the same page right away. I know that I've definitely evolved over almost a year and a few months from joining Culture Circle and still learning. And so it is important that we remember that our coworkers, our leaders, everybody thinks a little bit differently, has different experiences, but the common denominator within all of us is that humanity. And so if we remember to just act in the most basic of humanity ways, then that's how we can form connections, and that's how we can make slower progress. But yeah, I think that's what I would add.
Very nice. Well, I think we have one last thing, correct, Andrea, that we would like to do. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it to you, Andrea, as we do this one last thing for y'all. And again, watching live or the replay, you can do this anytime. So,
well, one of the things that we do within our leadership development group, like I said, we do things a little bit differently. And one of the areas that I work in is working with energy. And Maria brought up a point earlier about being conscious of how you're feeling and taking a moment to really assess, like, where are you at with what's going on. And we've been talking about fear, and that comes up a lot in business and every day for us. But if you take a moment right now, maybe if you're at home or listening, you can do this later, but close your eyes if you would like. Take a deep breath in and then exhale. And as you're breathing, pay attention to how your body is feeling. Do you have any knots? Do you feel energy just getting blocked somewhere, or your breath getting blocked? Can you only breathe shallowly or quickly? And as you inhale and exhale, and you take a moment to feel where you might feel that knot. Is it in the pit of your stomach? Are you feeling it in your shoulders or in your neck? Is it in your throat? Is it in your legs? A lot of these are signs of anxiety and panic and the effects of stress. So as you're taking this moment for yourself right now, as you do your next inhale, have it come from your core. Inhale deeply. And as you fill your whole body, this next time as you exhale, picture exhaling from wherever that knot might be in your space. So that as you're exhaling, you're also releasing the tension that you're feeling that's being held in your body as a way to protect yourself. That's really where it's coming from. And it's triggered by fear. It's triggered by stress a lot of times, and it affects your digestive system. It affects all of the systems in your body ultimately. So again, as you inhale deeply, hold it in your body. Let that pure air fill every part of you, and then exhale and release the tension that you're feeling within your body. One more time. Let's inhale. And this time, as you exhale, we just release so we can reset in a place of peacefulness for ourselves and grounding. When you're ready, come back to present. Thank you, ladies, for doing this exercise. Thank you. With us. And then one last thing to tee up for our leadership development team and what we're offering from Culture Circle this particular month. Again, we don't do things the way everybody else does out there. And actually, it makes it really fun, especially when it comes to development. So whether you are currently an executive, have a leadership role, or you're an individual contributor and you're interested in finding out more about your own journey and your progress and path forward, we offer something called Business Tarot. And this is a tarot card reading that is applied to your business experience. Alyssa Polizzi from our team leads this, and it is unlike any experience you have ever had, at least that I had ever had. It is this is a half hour, I think, that we are offering. And in that half hour, it is an eye-opening and yet fun experience that you will have that will prompt some additional questions for you. And Alyssa will lead you through this step with such grace and such compassion that it'll give you an answer for this next step in your journey. So go to our website or reach out to Charisse or one of us, Maria and myself, and we can put you in touch with Alyssa. And we'll be sharing more links to her Calendly and additional information about her on our LinkedIn, Culture Circle LinkedIn page in the coming days.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here. Thank you for everyone that joined us in the High Vibe Zone as we talked about leading with humanity. I'm feeling super relaxed after that. It's like, what, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? What doesn't matter. Time is relative because that was amazing. So thank you so much. Yes. Also, if you comment in this replay or live Business Tarot, we will reach out to you proactively and get you set up. So go ahead, Alyssa. I see another Alyssa. It's such a great name. So yeah, go ahead and comment Business Tarot in the comments. So yes, thank you for being here with us. Any final words from the two of you?
Humanity and compassion. Take away words just to contemplate. And then the next time you're triggered by something at work, remember humanity and compassion.
I agree. I think those are the words for us to carry with us.
All right. And that's how you lead with humanity, folks. Thank you so much for being with us here in the High Vibe Zone. Have a beautiful rest of your week.
Thank you.
You are a spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout, to amplify and transcend, slay the ego, raise the humanity. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone.